Hello.
Hello, can you see
Can you
me?
can you see me?
I can't see you,
Oh,
actually.
okay, hold on.
Uh-huh.
All right. Can you see me now?
Oh, yes.
Hi.
Hi, nice to see you.
Nice to see you. How are you?
Good, good. How are you? How's the weather today?
It's nice today,
Yeah.
but it's supposed to have a little rain tonight.
New York is like still very cold.
Is it?
Yeah.
So, Shooting, right?
Yes, shooting.
Yes. Hi, Shooting. How are you?
Good, good, good. Can I call you Mr. Hada? Is
You
that
can call me No, you can call me Stuart.
Stuart? Okay, I'll call you Stuart.
All right. So, thank you for your questions.
Yes, I have so many questions to ask, but some kind like for my research paper, I hope.
Right. So, can I ask you, how did you determine that this was going to be the topic of your research paper?
Because I'm in the arts administration program. We have a student in performing art and visual art, and I'm in the visual art division, and I have to choose a topic for my thesis. And for the past 2 semesters, we have been studying the museum, like how they're being granted and how's the federal fund and everything. And I found that, and we also study the structure of the museum and everything and galleries, but I found the museum store interesting point to study, like how can it support a museum as a whole, and how it's like how museum to fulfill its mission in like educational purpose. So my focus is in arts museum, and
That's great.
I talked to several professor about this. My advisors think it's a good topic, but I have received so many questions from different professors that some saying that they don't consider the museum store as educational purpose, but I want to convince them. So
Okay, well, I'll help you convince them. Definitely.
yes.
Well, it's really great that you're choosing museum stores as a topic, because I think, in general, we've always been sort of the stepchild of museums. We're not taken seriously. We're considered, they're just the gift store. And I like to tell my colleagues and here at the museum that we would not exist if the museum did not exist. And we're not a gift store. There's, one of the key things, Shooting, is that everyone, any store can call themselves a gift store.
Yes.
But not any store can call themselves a museum store.
Yes.
A museum store is very special because obviously we belong to a museum in order, and there's no one that can just come and open up a store and say, I'm a museum store. So we're very special, but absolutely we have to, we align ourselves with our museums or our institutions. And so that's what makes us also very unique and special, because every museum is very special and different and unique.
Yes, because I have talked to so many like professors, and some of them already work in the museum before, and they consider the core part of the museum is like the curatorial department about like research, collect, and preserve art. But I think a museum, it's also, they have to function, they have to operate, they have to have like financial support.
It's a business. It is. It's a business too. It has to be self-sufficient.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
So I think museum store is important, and I look at many like literatures and journal articles. There's very little research on this. So
there is very little research. In fact, the American Alliance of Museums, the AAM.
Yeah.
If you go to one of the key points that we're, as the Museum Store Association, is, there's no sub-book on our topic. In fact, recently the AAM's book publisher reached out to us, to the MSA Association, to see if we would be interested in helping them write a book about our industry. So that's a great step that we are actively going to be working on in the next, I would say, the next couple years to publish a book. So there is a record, and some, especially with the AAM, about how important museum stores are to their institutions. So that's one thing. And the other thing that's really fascinating is another colleague on the board sort of surveyed education, schools that had museum studies programs, and not one of them offers a course on museum stores or museum retailing.
Wow.
So that gives you a sense of how currently undervalued and sort of, I don't know, well, I know it's undervalued, but it may be just not represented, how museum stores are important to museums, but there's not even a class that one can attend to on any curriculum currently. So that to me is a total opportunity, because obviously what there should be, if one is studying and wants to be a full-fledged museum administrator, you need to know about all aspects of the museum, and the store is a very important part of any museum experience.
Yes.
So anyway, that's just some interesting tidbits. So I applaud your work, and I think it will help the industry. So I'm here to help you.
Thank you so much. Because I have with so many questions. These questions are like my professor always asks me, and I also like for the question what I'm asking is about our research method for this paper.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you my method is like I go through a lot of literature and I write literature review and then come out my hypothesis about museum store. Do we undervalue it, and how does it serve as the extension of a museum to fulfill its function? And I set out the hypothesis, and all of the interviews are like evidence to support my hypothesis or not.
Right.
Yes. So that's why
So am I the only museum? Yeah. Am I the only museum store person you've spoken to, or are you interviewing a variety of folks?
I interview a variety of. I already interviewed the one like was work in the mat, like I think his name.
Oh,
is
Ken Weinstein.
Yeah,
you mentioned Ken.
Yeah,
Okay.
I interviewed him, and I tried to interview more people in the museum store. But for my research, I would also interview some people in the curatorial department and also the educational department to see what's their aspect. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you need help with directing to any colleagues in any of those areas, let me know and I can see what I can do to assist.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. So do you want to start with your questions?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Like the first.
So number one,
Yeah.
how do you see your museum store as a place to pursue the educational objectives of your museum?
Yes.
So, I mean, I think that we are, how do we see our place? I think we are an important department of the museum, as important of any of the other educational departments, which I would consider obviously our education department, our curatorial department, really any of those other departments. We're just like them. We're a full-fledged department. I think that we are also really on the front line. It's where the public can interact with, and I like to say they can come and take home a piece of the museum. They can come into the museum, they can look at all the art, but they can't obviously take that art home with them. And so the only other places where they could possibly interact and have some kind of taking home would be if they go into the zoo store and they see something inspired by an exhibition or a collection, whether it be a postcard or a mug or whatever, and then they can learn about, be inspired about that painting or whatever the art subject matter that item is derived from, and hopefully they'll take it home and remember their experience, leave the museum with it, but it's like taking a piece of the museum. The other one can say that one can go to an education department and watch a video and have that memory in their mind, or do a child can do an art activity and maybe take home something with that art activity. But I mean, I think really the museum store is really the only place they can actually have something physical that they can take home with them, you know. And so obviously museum stores started out as selling books, exhibition catalogs,
yes.
or permanent collection handbooks, and then graduated to selling postcards because people wanted a memory of that painting. And obviously we are much more than that. We have, you know, museum stores, I think, have evolved and in the times, but I know that everything we sell in our stores is education, and I can argue that point with anyone. And in particular because we have everything from signage that accompanies our products to product information sheets or cards that we hand out when someone buys something, and you know, or we create hang tags that attach to a product so it educates them, you know, and we reference the artwork caption just like it's referenced on a label hanging next to the actual artwork. You know, we have it referenced, which we train our staff so they need to know about what the public is seeing. Yeah. So everything we talk about in our store and sell is all educational.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah, I really like you saying, like, interact with the public, because there's several times, like, people studying arts administration, we always go to the museum, but our, like, grandparents, they don't go to museum often, and sometimes they want to take something to home, and they want to, like, sometimes they want to touch it, but it's not allowed. But if you
and so you can actually touch something in the store.
Yes.
You know, and I think also, you know, we are, well, a lot of times visitors come to the museum, they really don't have, very rarely would they interact with the curator, right? Unless the curator does a special tour or a special program that you have to go. But on a regular day-to-day, the public never even sees the curator. The only interaction they'll have is maybe what they read in the galleries, or if they read an essay, you know, in a catalog. But that's a very, you know, one-directional way of communication. They have to read something that someone wrote. Whereas in the store, we actually interact, and we can ask them, how was your visit? What was your favorite painting? And they say, well, I like that. Or how did you like the exhibition? Oh, I didn't like it. Well, why didn't you like it? I mean, we really have a two-way exchange. And then if they say, well, I really like this painting, then we can say, well, if you really like that painting, you might want to consider buying this poster of that same painting, and you can have it on your walls. I mean, there's a lot of interaction. So I definitely think we are the front line of the museum, and most visitors spend the most time interacting with an actual museum employee in the store.
Okay. Thank you.
Got it?
Yes.
Because usually you go to a museum, you might interact with someone at the ticket desk. Okay, here's your money. It's very transactional. You go away. The only other places could be with a security guard, maybe, because the security guard might say, well, don't touch that. Maybe you'll take a docent tour. Maybe, you know, you'll attend a lecture, but usually it's in the store where the public spends most of its time interacting with an actual museum employee. Yes. And that is something we take very highly. We are sort of the front face of the museum in the store.
Yes, this comes to my 13th question, because I talk about, like, some researchers suggest that cross-functional involvement between the curatorial and retailing department. Some scholars claim that interpretive training is necessary for museum store staff, because with the retail staff interpretation, relevant museum store merchandise become educational.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. And we train, you know, so our curators give our staff walkthroughs throughout when a new exhibition opens, so they lead our staff. We also provide a lot of training materials to our staff. There are these exhibition fact sheets that we distribute. We also, when we have our quarterly staff meetings, our buyers, the merchants who buy the product or develop the product, we actually give presentations to our staff about the upcoming exhibitions or about a new acquisition or whatever is important in terms of how we are if we're going to have product that we're creating to sell in the store, we also then need to train our staff so they can speak to the product about why it's important and why we created that. And then we also, we have our, the museum has a magazine, a members magazine. Mm-hmm. And I would say this is more outside the norm, but because I've worked very hard to make sure that our museum store is integrated into the museum and actually has a place of standing and respectability. The stores have, we always get a 2-page spread that we talk about the products. And for example, this is a Monet exhibition, and I can send you a copy of this.
Okay, thank you.
If you give me your address. But it talks about like why, we talk about Monet and then why we created products and the history of Monet products. Or we did some music CDs that relate to some current exhibitions, and so why there's a connection between art and music, and why then do we have these CDs that we sell to relate to the exhibition. So it's very much integrated.
Okay.
And often the curators come to me to suggest products they want to see in the stores. Or they make sure that we are given information, especially on artisans or books that support their exhibition. They help me out too, making sure that we are given, because they're very proud of the stores and they want to see the fact that, we are truly reflecting and representing their exhibition appropriately. So it's a win-win situation for both of us.
Yes. And is it a training like mandatory for all the staff member in the store?
Yes, we have our mandatory staff meetings. So they do the training there, and everyone is expected to read all the information and to read the magazines, because the magazines also talk about the exhibitions, so they can learn about the exhibitions here. And then as well as we also let all the staff is all encouraged to take an audio tour. We have our audio tours for the exhibition, so all the staff are allowed to do an audio tour for free, and so they can learn about the exhibition. Wow. So they have to then, because they have to be the one to speak about it when they interact with the public.
Yes, thank you. And we go to our second question. Like, how does your museum store balance educational and financial objectives?
Well, it's always a balancing act, but it's actually helps us be better business people, but also more focused in what we are presenting. So just because if something is popular, and just because it sells doesn't mean we're going to carry it, because it has to have that educational objective as well. So it has to not only be educational, but it has to hopefully sell well. So it makes our job a little more challenging, because we also have to find the right products. And I like to say that we just as the curators curate the exhibitions, we curate the store.
Yes.
We are very selective on what we choose, to make sure it's educational, but also to make sure it is going to sell well. We also have to make sure that it's priced at the right price point, and often we have to have a variety of price points, because not everyone can afford a $200 print, let's say a reproduction on canvas. But we want to make sure that that's also available as a $1.95 postcard or a $14.95 print. So we have to make sure that it's available for a wide audience, and making sure everyone can find something.
Yes.
But I think balancing the education and financial is actually easy, because as long as we know what the exhibition is about. And if we can't find the product, then we try to create it. We develop a lot of our own merchandise to directly reflect what's going on. And oftentimes on the general market, it's not available. So we have to create it. So we have to work with artisans or estates, work with image rights, work with imagery, work with the designers to develop, the product. And so, oftentimes we are, and that's how we can make sure it's educational and financially objective, is when we can control that development.
So, like, you just, I repeat again to make sure I understand this. So you just make sure like everything sell in the museum store is educational, and make sure everyone can get what they want in the museum store, and then because everything sell here is educational, so another point is how to make it profit. So it's,
we have to make sure it's appealing to a visitor. So for example, with Monet, we had, there are over 60 works in the exhibition, but we're not going to create all postcards of all 60 works. We curate, we sort of work with the curators, but we make the final decision on what we feel the public is going to like the most. So we, thankfully, we have history, we kind of know what our public expects, what they like, and so that helps us guide in terms of what images we'll use to create products.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's also that's sort of balancing educational but also financial. You don't want to create a product of an ugly image, right? You want to create a product of something that people are going to want to buy. So that's where that's where our knowledge and expertise comes in hand. Just like a curator might think that a painting is the most important painting scholarly wise, but we might look at it and go, it's not going to sell.
Okay. So, yes.
And that's happened. For example, there have been, don't quote me on this, but the current exhibition catalog that we have for Monet has this image, and we did not like this image because to us, it doesn't kind of represent Monet, but the curator, and it wasn't from our museum, thought that was a really important image, whereas we created so our museum created a smaller book at a lower price point, and this is the image we chose.
Oh, I see.
So much more, prettier, much more Monet versus this. So if you look at the two side by side, someone's going to want to pick this up. But the curator said, no, this is the scholar image. But we're like, but it's not gonna sell. People are not gonna want it.
Yes.
So it's a balance.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we go to the ninth question. Like, could you please walk me through the process of new product development, like how plans for upcoming shows and everything?
Well, we always start with, obviously, the checklist of the exhibition. What is going to be shown? And then from there we know the curators are supposed to sort of provide feedback to the whole museum about what they say are the most important images or what represents the exhibition. So we take that, we actually follow that and as a guideline, but then we also then add in what we feel are going to be important images. And then looking at the type of exhibition, we figure out what kind of products will sell well with what images or what we're going to be given. So for Monet, a lot of pretty images. Monet is very broad, and we could create a lot of different products. So I don't know if you've gone to our online store, if on our website, but you can really get a sense of what we created and get a sense of what for Monet versus other exhibitions. But the other big thing that really weighs in on our ability to create product is whether or not we have the permissions and the rights to reproduce the artwork on that type of product. And I'll give you an example. A few years ago, we had a Matisse exhibition. Well, the Matisse estate, which is run by Matisse's grandson, does not allow his works to, for example, appear on a mug or a T-shirt. He let us do a magnet, and he's fine with two-dimensional works of art, meaning postcard paper products.
Mm-hmm.
But, for example, you cannot crop the image, meaning you have to show it in its entirety. Mm-hmm. The Georgia O'Keeffe estate goes even a step further. You have to show the image in its entirety, always with a white border.
Wow.
So, for example, so we couldn't, when we had a Georgia O'Keeffe exhibition, people expected mugs or tote bags or that. We couldn't. We are not allowed mm-hmm. to create. So there's all these variety guidelines that we have to follow. But we can also be creative mm-hmm. and try to work around that. So for Georgia O'Keeffe, we have a painting in our collection called Petunias. Mm-hmm. And so since we couldn't do it on a tote bag or this or that, we actually had a designer and an artist come up with an inspired design of Georgia O'Keeffe's Petunias. So it wasn't her actual artwork, but it was inspired by that painting. And then we could use that design and art to create products. So we work around. So if you look on our website and try to type in Petunias, mm-hmm. you'll see some of our Petunias products.
Ooh. Let me see. So do you have like in-house designer for these?
We do. We do a combination. We have in-house designers, but we also have vendors who offer their services when we buy their product.
Okay. Oh, I see that.
Do you see the Petunias?
Yes.
So that was inspired by our Georgia O'Keeffe painting of Petunias. And so that's a way that we can try to get really creative in terms of trying to make sure that, because the public doesn't understand all these nuances of rights. So they come in, they go, why don't you have a t-shirt, or why don't you have, because they expect that nowadays, and why don't you have a mug with this? Well, I'm sorry, but we were limited in what we could do, so we try to find ways that we can be more creative.
And also, I have a question, do you have to check with the curatorial department every time with the product?
No.
Okay.
I don't tell the curators what art to hang in the galleries or mm-hmm. what art to purchase for the museum. So they don't tell me I don't have to check with them on what products we select and buy for the store. They trust us. And that's in part because I've worked one of the first things I did when I started here was to have meetings with each of the curators and have them tell me what is important about their area of the collection that I should focus on. So making sure that the lines of communication are open. Mm-hmm. And over the years, and I've been here for now, going on 14 years, they know what my aesthetic is, and they know what our buyers are capable of. And so they don't have to worry about it. Like I said, they come to us saying, can you do a product? We just got a brand new stained glass window, and one of the first things the curators did was send the image to me saying, Stuart, look at this image. It's going to make some great products. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of relationship we want. So I think I'm probably more unique than most museum stores in that I'm supported by our curators very much. And that is not the usual case, I would say, in the general world. But that's what we are trying to achieve. That should be the norm in all museums and museum stores.
Like respect and communication.
I'm sorry?
Like respect and communication going on.
Yes, absolutely. But it's a matter of also knowing what's appropriate, what's not appropriate.
Yes.
So.
And how about the educational department? Do they have any suggestion for the program?
So the way we work with the way we work with our education departments really is to support their programs. A lot of times they'll have lectures mm-hmm. and with prominent artists or authors, and then we support them with book signings, or we feature there will be we have an artist in residency program here, and there might be an artist who developed something, and so they'll come to us and say, hey, we're going to have this artist here, and they produce this music CD. Are you interested in carrying in the store? And usually we are, because obviously the visitor comes, they see something and they want to learn more about that artist, and so they want, we want to be able to offer something. So we work well with them in terms of, especially in coordinating a lot of events for, especially book signings, because they're really, the main group that books the lectures and symposiums and all the discussions and talks. And so there are a lot of, well-known authors or artists who have books, and so we want to support that. And it's actually most successful when the education department has the lecture, and then we have the book signing right after the lecture. That's when it works the best, because you have a captive audience already. Yes. And the lecturer just spoke about them, and then you want to basically have the ability to meet that artist or author, and then have them sign a book or whatever. So that's generally how we work with the education department. The other way we worked is we've worked on projects. Mm-hmm. We worked a couple years ago. I developed this book called I Heart Art, mm-hmm. and what it is, it's an activity book, ages 6 and up, and it features images from our museum. Uh-huh. So this is a Monet painting. And the education department wrote the educational activity. So they wrote, Monet painted the Grand Canal in 1908 during a trip to Venice. He used loose, relaxed brushstrokes to create the mood of the painting. And then on the flip side, it says, draw a scene from a place you visited recently. So the education department wrote the activity. I selected the images to go in this book, and the curators actually confirmed and double-checked the activities from the educators, and I got this great activity book inspired by the collections of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco for kids, young kids. And so it's a great way, because a lot of what the education department is teaching, the younger students. Mm-hmm. So this was a great way that they could have something, and that if they had a student class, the students could buy this book and take it home with them. So so we worked on this book. We also just created, there's a book called I Heart. So this was number 1 in the series, and then we created another one, I Heart Monet, mm-hmm. and it's on our online store. So that was our second one we did with the education department. And then with the Museum Store Association, we're just releasing another book now, our third, called I Heart Museums. Wow. And what we did was we asked for our member museums to provide activities based on a work from their collection. So we have 31 different museums from across the country. Each submitted an activity. And again, so it's, an activity and then a piece of artwork. So our museum has 2 activities, because we're the De Young and the Legion of Honor, and it's a brand new, and it shows a map of the different activities from across the museum. So this is being released next month. Wow. And it was a benefit and a co-publication for MSA as well. So MSA is going to get some royalties for this book, but all the activities came from each of the museums and their educational departments who helped provide the activities. And you choose the image for that? I'm sorry? And you choose the image for the book, or? Each of the institutions submitted a couple images, and then the publisher decided, okay, of the images they had, which would work well together. But each museum was asked to submit a couple, so the publisher had choices, but in the end, they chose one. Of each museum. So there's 31 different museums, and it's going to be available next month. And so the publisher also then created a related coloring pencil set to go with the book called I Heart Museums Colored Pencils.
Wow.
So this is just examples of some of the things we've been doing to help spread the word about museum stores. In fact, this book is very dear to me because the idea was conceived about a year and a half ago, and then last year at our annual MSA Museum Store Association conference, we really sat down and we put out the call to start soliciting activities. And so, it's something that I think we're trying to advocate more for our industry, and that's a new strategic initiative for the Museum Store Association to do, is to start more advocating.
Yes, yes.
This one
is a good example.
I'm going to send you, I recently did a blog today, actually that came out today on the Museum Store about advocacy, and I'll forward that to you so you can get a sense. I spoke at there's a version of the Museum Store Association in the United Kingdom. It's called the Association of Cultural Enterprises, ACE, and they had a conference last month in Edinburgh, Scotland, and I was their international speaker. And so I'll forward you sort of the blog that came out today was sort of recapping that role I had. But it talks about our new goal for advocacy for our industry, which I think hopefully you can find helpful.
Yeah, thank you. I think we don't have much time.
I can stay on till I have 20 more minutes.
Okay, that's cool. Let's go through the question fast.
So what are the different types of museum stores? I mean, they're really any type of museum. Usually if there's a museum store. So it could be a natural history museum, an art museum, a science museum, even we count a botanical garden. Really the overriding arching principle is if it's a nonprofit institution that's generally cultural, that's the museum store. So we have the World War II Museum in New Orleans, and there's they have a very big store. There's the botanical garden, or there's a desert western museum, and they have a store. Mm-hmm. So, the types of stores are as varied as the types of museums that exist.
So how about especially like the art museum, do they have sort of different type of museum store with the art museum?
Art museums are, the art museums are certainly different from history museums or science museums. So, we share certainly, similar characteristics and statistics. There's different statistics per type of museums that the Museum Store Association keeps track. Our last sort of retail industry report was done in 2014, and we're actually working on a new one to update it this year. So a new one will come out in 2017.
Okay.
So it's actually, the work is going to start in May, where we have to, solicit feedback or input from all our members so that we can produce the report. But so we definitely analyze by type of museum, also size of museum, size, especially in terms of the dollars each museum store generates. So, the Museum of Modern Art is in a different league, let's say, from the, Sacramento Museum of Art. It's different size, different, what really drives our business is the attendance, really, to a museum. That really helps determine our financial, everything that follows from that are, how many visitors does the museum get? So generally, the larger the museum, the bigger their retail operation and the bigger their success in terms of sales.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And next question, how are museum store viewed within the operation of the museum? How that different from one museum to another?
I think it's varied. It really depends on who is in charge. Mm-hmm. It depends on depends, starts from the top. How does the board feel about the store? How does the director feel about the store? How does the senior staff of the museum view the store? And if we don't have that support and those upper echelons of management, then the store is not viewed as important. So if the director says this store is important, we are viewed as important. If the director says, no, I don't care about the store, then generally that store doesn't have the support. A lot of things also, what influences is where the museum store falls under the organization. Most museum stores are under the finance area. So like for example, I report to the chief financial officer.
Like CFO.
Well, I'm sorry?
Like the CFO.
Yes, that's who my boss is. But some museum stores, the museum stores is considered a marketing department of the museum. So sometimes they report to the director of marketing, or and whoever's in charge of. There's the term, I'm sure you've heard, director of external affairs, or director of visitor services. Sometimes the museum store falls under there. Sometimes it falls under operations. There's facilities and operations. So the store is really meant to be like, well, we're just a part of the operation and a facility and a service or an amenity. Personally, it doesn't matter where I report to, because as long as I know that I have the support and I can do my job. But I think rightfully it probably belongs more to the finance area, because so much of what we do is important to the museum financially. And we are really running a business within a business.
Yes.
So, but it really depends, how we're viewed. Obviously we're integral to the operations of the museum. For example, we have to be open when the museum is open.
Yes.
Right? I can't have a store closed if the museum is open.
Yes.
And oftentimes we have to go beyond that when there's special events that they want the store to be open because it's an exhibition opening or a day we have special days called access days where we allow disabled visitors to come in to the galleries on a non-public day. But since the store is part of that experience, we're open to support that.
I feel like museum store is support for the public's involvement.
I'm sorry?
I feel like the museum store is always support the public, how they interact and involve with the museum.
Absolutely.
And we go to the next question. Some scholar claims that there's a trend make the museum more accessible and less illicit, and to build a welcoming and friendly and even modern atmosphere. Why do you think people in the field argue about the proper role of the museum shop?
Well, I think in terms of there's a trend, I think there definitely is a trend. I think that given this day and age where we are competing, museums are competing for people's leisure time, absolutely we have to be more welcoming. We have to make it accessible. We have to be less elitist, because that is we are competing for people's free time. People now have so many options than they did 100 years ago. Think about, there was no internet, there was no video games, there was no YouTube or on-demand streaming services or music, and plus there's movies, concerts all the time, and the people want to get outdoors. There's more restaurants, people go out to socialize more and eat. So I think the museum has a great opportunity because it's a place that you can do everything. You can bring your friends, you can socialize, you can visually be inspired, you can visually be stimulated, you can indulge in your retail therapy, you can go shopping, you can eat at the cafe or at the restaurant. You can really make a whole complete experience out of it. And also, it's good for all ages, right? We try to be welcoming for all types, because especially the younger generation and children, they are our future members. They are our future audience. So we want to cultivate with the younger generation and children a positive, wonderful experience at a museum, because when they grow up, they'll want to take their kids and they'll have a pleasant memory of coming into a museum. So absolutely, if a museum was just viewed as an elitist, stuffy area, that's going to create the death of museums. It's just like libraries these days. Libraries are trying to make sure that they're welcoming, that they're engaging with children. They're doing. I have a niece who lives in New York City, and she works for the New York Public Library, and she is their children's storyteller at times. So she dresses up in costumes from books, and you have to make it accessible.
Yes.
So in terms of it being a trend, it's definitely not mundane. It's actually more exciting.
Yes.
I think.
Yes, because some of the scholars, for example, one of my professors, he said she feel like the museum store sometimes like sell stuff like cheapening the museum.
No, it's not. It's actually enhancing. It's actually enhancing the experience, and it's making the museum more accessible and more welcoming. Uh-huh. It actually, the store is, people are used to shopping. People derive pleasure from shopping. So how do you allow that, and it helps enhance the experience of a museum versus people thinking you go into a museum, you can't touch it, you got to be quiet, you got to just kind of look, and you got to hopefully you think you're going to know about. You're supposed to try to understand something or appear, but it has to be more welcoming, and it's definitely, if not, museums are going to die like dinosaurs if they don't change with the times.
Yes, like last semester I worked with New York Philharmonic. I feel like they also having problems of getting millennials to listen to their classic musics. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of, like the San Francisco Symphony right now is making sure that they're doing very accessible programming, not just pure classics, but they bring in jazz, they bring in pop artists to perform with the symphony,
Yes.
How do you need to bring in new audiences? Yes. Like I said, we have so many options these days that we are competing with everything,
mm-hmm. And let's go to next question. Some suggest that there's a tension between the mission of the organization to present art and the function of the organization as a gathering place, as a cool place, as a third place, as a profit center, etc. What do you think?
I think that the old model, if there was an old model or an old school of thought, there would be tension. But the new model and new thought is not about tension. It's actually viewed as it's actually a opportunity that we have, and it's an asset to have the fact that we can not only we can present art, but we can also be a gathering place and a cool place to be. I think that's a strength that museums should take advantage of.
Okay, sure. Thank you.
Including the store.
Yes.
Yeah. Ultimately, museums have to run and have to operate in the black. They have to at least break even, if not, earn a little money to keep the programs. I mean, everything we generate in the store goes directly back to support the museum's exhibitions and programs, and we put that everywhere. We put that phrase. There's a phrase that we put on all our products, on our signage. Every purchase directly supports the collections and exhibitions of the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco.
Yes.
I mean, that everything that we do is for the museum. And, I think that, you don't want to end up like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, who is having some serious financial difficulties right now, where they're laying off staff and they can't build their new modern wing, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. They can't do their programs. They're postponing exhibitions. I mean, there's a lot of issues. So that's not good for the public. So museums have to be financially healthy.
Have to be like financially sustainable.
Absolutely, and the stores contribute a major part to ensuring that, especially in America where we don't have the benefit of a lot of government support.
Yes.
Compared to museums in Italy or France, but that's changing there too. The government is not providing as much support too, and making the museums there more reliant on their own fundraising and earned revenue activities. And so, of course, the stores are more important to make sure that they're profitable and bringing in sales and income.
Okay. Next one, like besides scholarly books and catalogs, what other products can have educational function? I think you also give me.
Yeah, so like I said, the prints. I mean, anything we can, like I said, as long as we explain and provide education and be inspired about an item. To me, it's all educational. As long as I can back it up with why this is, inspired. I'm trying to look at my office and, look at something. I mean, the music CD, I said, even, what do I have here? This was a Keith Haring tote bag that we produced for our exhibition, and and it's made out of vinyl, like a tarp material. Well, guess what? The original artwork that Keith Haring painted on was vinyl tarp.
Yes.
So this product to me is educational because it talks about what the artists originally used to actually create this artwork, and here I made a product of the tarp. Plus, I make sure on the bottom of the bag there's educational information about the exhibition and about the museum. And it has the credit line of the artwork. So this is examples of how we make sure that even though it's really cool and it has the artist's signature, it's that, but also there's educational information on the product.
Yes.
So that's just an example.
Okay, sure. And next one, the products that are sold in museum stores show their contribution to the sustainability of the museum collection in the broadcasting of the collection. Do you see this process acts as educational function simultaneously?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Like I said, someone didn't know Richard Diebenkorn and they like an artwork and they buy a print or a postcard of it. So then they start knowing more about that artist. And another thing that we always do is we make sure, like this is a journal we did for Richard Diebenkorn for an exhibition. Again, it has the exhibition information on the back. We also, since we are allowed to do a detail of the artwork, we also make sure we show the full image of the painting uncropped so people know as a reference what the real painting looks like, plus the artwork caption. Plus, we make sure that the De Young name is on there so people can relate what they saw to the museum. So this helps broadcast and market the museum, and so people know, oh, I remember going to the De Young and saw this exhibition there.
And we go to the next question. It is said that the MoMA Design Store was the first museum store that has established a curatorial team dedicated to architecture and design.
Yeah, I don't think that's correct. I think the MoMA New York has a architecture and design department, curatorial department, and I know for a fact that they have to show their products to the architecture and design curator.
Yes.
But I don't. In terms of a curatorial team, I'm a little confused about that. I don't think the store has a curatorial team.
No, maybe not. Yes.
The museum has a curatorial team, and I know that the store has to show the architecture and design curator to get their seal of approval for what they sell. I think for that museum it's fine, because they're so focused on architecture and design. But I think that though there's a lot of this is just my personal opinion, and so don't put it down, but
yeah.
I think MoMA New York is too focused on architecture and design. There are so many other elements of their collections that are not, to me, in my mind, giving more focus. They they're really focused, their mail order business, their catalog, their store, all about architecture and design products. It's very commercial, but they really, though, have the masterpieces of art in many other paintings, sculpture, and I don't see the kind of attention they give to architecture and design products, especially design products, that they give to paintings and other areas of the museum.
Why do you think they're doing that? Just personally.
Well, I think that obviously they're very successful at it, and I think that maybe it's also where they can, they've carved out a niche and an identity and a brand. It helps really influence their brand. So if you're looking for a cool item you need, a design item, you can trust MoMA New York, right?
Yes.
So I think that in an era where I think they're really it's sort of their brand DNA, their identity. Okay. So that's what they're known for. And of course, I'm sure it's also obviously they're very successful financially with that product category. So it's probably the engine that drives their business.
And also, next question, like museum are granted this non-profit status as educational organization, blah, blah, blah. So if the products sell, like tying with the museum mission, then they don't have to pay the income tax on revenue.
Right, so UBIT is very important for museum stores as well. We've actually we're all educated and trained on UBIT. And also, we have at our annual conference in the past, we've done sessions and white papers and articles about UBIT. And so I've actually been through a walkthrough with an IRS person walking through the store, and where I had to argue why something is educational. And I succeed in defending and explaining to them why what we create is educational.
Oh, okay, so you have to explain to them. And
yes, if we are being inspected or audited, but we claim that everything we sell is educational. And again, it comes to being very focused and ensure that we can, when we go and find a product or buy a product, we have to make sure we can back it up. Oh. And so these are the questions that are running through our mind as we are evaluating new products and determining whether or not they are appropriate for our institution or not. So these are things that we are in the back of our minds that, when we're out to meet with vendors or go to trade shows, we ask ourselves, is this educational? Like we're walking down an aisle and we see a product, is this educational? And if we can't answer it ourselves, then we know it's not educational.
So who makes the decision? So the director of the museum store usually make the decision?
Usually the buyer. The buyer. If the larger museums have a buying staff, so then the buyers do that. But they know. So I go to the trade shows with my merchandise manager, and we walk together and make sure that we are, asking that question to ourselves. Most museum stores their manager is their buyer. Oh. So, the smaller museums.
Okay, the next one, the store of Museum of Arts and Design and MoMA promote and sell design and pieces in lifestyle. Do you think these products tie with the museum's mission?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they do a good job. Like I said, MoMA New York they were the first museum to create a curatorial department for architecture and design. So they sell a lot of design products. And here in San Francisco, SF MoMA, who also has an architecture and design department, creates and sells a lot of design items. I used to work at SF MoMA before I worked here. So I know SF MoMA very well. And so again, the four main curatorial departments at SF MoMA are painting and sculpture, architecture and design, photography, and then media arts. So, video, digital arts. So again, they make sure it's very focused in terms of what they're known for. And people expect that if they come to the museum and there are, architecture and design items on view in the galleries, they expect to see architecture and design items in our store. We don't have an architectural and design department in our museum, but we do have a department of American decorative arts and also crafts. Mm-hmm. So we actually sell a lot of craft work. So we work with local, national, and international craft artisans because we actually have craft galleries. So people expect us to see craft. And that's what makes us unique and distinct and different in our museum.
Okay. We go to the final question, like, does MSA have survey data or what kind of data on the educational engagement? Do you have any data on that?
We don't. And I think that's a great question. And I think it's something that we should probably work on. But the problem, most museums have customer satisfaction or engagement with their store and data. Not so much educational engagement. I think that's an area that is under-researched. Mm-hmm. But most museums will survey their visitors, and often on the questionnaire is sections about the store. So the last surveys, extensive surveys that our museum did was about 3 years ago. We really are due for new. But MSA in general, I think that is something that we'll probably have to do for the future because we would have to work through each of our individual members to find out who are their customers. So the institutions that our members belong to are the best places to really handle this type of research versus MSA. What we will do or can do is we can do survey data on our industry. Like I said, we have a retail industry report that we've done. The last one was in 2014, and so we're working on a new one this year that we will hopefully release at the end of this year, 2017.
Okay, thank you so much. I tried to look at the report, but it's so expensive online for me.
Oh, the MSA. Yeah, and the 2014 report is a little outdated. I'll see if I can get you a complimentary copy.
Okay, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, good. Keep me posted. I'd love to see a copy of your thesis when it's done.
Yeah, absolutely, next year. And also, I might send you some follow-up email regarding...
Absolutely.
And I might send you more questions as the project going on.
No problem, Shooting.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
I really appreciate your time.
Nice to meet you.
Nice
All
to
right,
meet you.
thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.